Welcome back, Husker fans, to another episode of the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson here from HuskerBigRed.com, and this is Danny Gillette joining me as my co-host of thegreatcornholio.org, here for another video stream / podcast as we look ahead to Nebraska and Indiana. We're a few days away from the game here on Saturday. Just to kind of give you guys a quick rundown, Indiana is 3-1 coming into this matchup. Nebraska is 1-3, but Danny, really quick, the spread's been moving up. It's 6.5 points now for Nebraska. Like, how are you feeling about that spread, or how can you even explain that at this point?
I was just going to say, I really can't explain that. I don't know how we're favored. In no way, shape, or form have we shown any basis on why we should be favored for any game this season, but maybe the odds makers know something we don't. I mean, honestly, what I'm thinking is maybe like the odds makers took into account, the bye week with Mickey Joseph, allowing the team to prepare and allowing things to kind of get set. And, maybe they took that into account and know that Mickey and Bill Bush can probably make more out of this talent than the previous head coach.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, is Indiana's not, they're not all that great. They're not the greatest thing since sliced bread. They are 3-1, but they beat Illinois at home, which isn't, that's a good win. They didn't win any Big Ten games last year. They also beat Idaho at home and then Western Kentucky at home in overtime before losing to Cincinnati. I think, in terms of like where these two teams are, rated, power ranked kind of nationally, they're pretty similar. They're both terrible defensively. If you look at the Big Ten stats, they're both near the bottom. I think they're like two out of the worst three in run defense and pass defense. Indiana doesn't also run the ball very well. They're one of the worst Big Ten rushing offenses. So I think there's a lot of things that, make you feel like this is kind of a good matchup for Nebraska. But 3 points I can understand just because it's two bad teams and the home team tends to get a few points, but 6, a touchdown. I mean, that seems like pretty. I mean, Nebraska's 0-4 against the spread this year, so I don't know if I would be betting that. I think the over's like 59 points though, or something, 60 points. I would definitely be betting the over because I don't know if these
Absolutely.
defenses are stopping anybody.
I know, it's too bad we didn't have any of these guys for our fantasy football teams on Saturday because I think we might be in for an offensive shootout, which I personally love. But yeah, no, I think like this would be a good game for the offense to get back on track. I know it was Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was really, really good, but 7 points was just so frustrating. We know what this offense is capable of, and hopefully a team like Indiana could allow for, Casey Thompson and Mark Whipple and everybody to get back into rhythm.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see, because Mickey said after the Oklahoma game, we need to slow down the tempo on offense. And I think this is going to be a good test of how that's going to work because, like Indiana, last week against Cincinnati, they ran 102 plays and they average right now 50 passes a game. That's insane. But they love the tempo stuff. Tom Allen loves to throw the football. That's been his MO since he's been the head coach at Indiana. They've got Connor Bazelak from Missouri. He transferred over, and he's averaging just under 300 yards a game. He's 1,100 something. But yeah, 50 passes a time. I think he's under 60% completion. So it's not like they're super efficient, but they're going to throw the football around, and they've got some playmakers. And if I'm Nebraska, I mean, I definitely don't want to see Indiana run like 90 plays on Saturday night. They need to, the Nebraska, I feel like, needs to try to make this more and really, as they move down, but more of that NFL style, like let's snap the damn ball under 10 seconds on the play clock type of thing. Get this game moving.
If nothing else, to give the defense a break because I have a feeling they're going to need their energy for all the Indiana drives. But it's going to be interesting to see because, both teams have playmakers on the offensive side of the football in particular. I know we talked about Indiana wide receiver Cam Camper. He has 11 receptions and 156 yards, averaging 14.2 yards per reception, I believe. And so, it's gonna be an interesting game. There's a lot of playmakers offensively on both sides of the football, and I guess we can kind of get into keys of the game with that. But I'm excited for this. What should be, I mean, hopefully not, but an offensive shootout. Both teams have the capabilities to really kind of up the ante here and make the offenses feel good. The defensive coordinators might be smashing their headsets at the end of the game, but at least the offense could probably feel good about themselves.
Yeah, and before we can get into our keys, we were talking off air just a little bit. It's been a bye week for Nebraska, and there's obviously some things that they've been trying to fix. They've been the two deep looks a little bit different. Piper's going to be starting this week at guard. Jaden Gould is a guy who's on the two deep now as a freshman at corner. Omar Brown's moved over to nickel, so you can see some of the adjustments that Bill Bush has made. You wrote about this, Danny, and at thegreatcornholio.org, talking about kind of simplifying things. What do you think that Bill Bush, needs to do, and how much is that going to help, just kind of letting players think less and just try to play more, against this Indiana offense?
Well, Marquise Buford Jr. said that they like to line up fast, and he thinks that will match up well with Indiana's tempo. And quite honestly, I think they just and this sounds like such a cop out answer, but play the game of football. I feel like for the past couple years, the defense has been put in tough positions where they're not able to really succeed and excel. I think this will give a chance for them to really kind of feel more comfortable, feel comfortable with where they're at, and put them in a position to be able to make plays because, you know, and like I wrote about yesterday, sometimes Shenander's schemes were too complicated. Three linebackers. Why are you putting three linebackers? Why not put the fastest players you can, and why not just try to line up and make sense of things versus trying to do all these different things and creative things. Just get back to what it was. And I'm very interested to see. You mentioned Jaden Gould, and he was one of the top recruits in last year's class. So I'm very interested to see how he does. And finally, Nebraska is going to play the young players, and now we'll see how they do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I've been talking about Jaden Gould for a little bit. He's was the top ranked recruit. They've got him playing at safety, so he got a little bit of action against Oklahoma. There's some other corners that are kind of in there, and that's good. That's a good thing. I mean, these guys can't be. You can't have the same players out there making mistakes without any accountability. So I like some of those changes, but the bottom line is that Bill Bush needs to get essentially the same guys on the field that were being used by Shenander and get him to play better. I mean, he needs Ty Robinson to be more productive, and Garrett Nelson especially. I think Garrett Nelson is a huge key for me. O'Shawn Mathis has played well. He hasn't been as productive as I would like him to be, but Garrett Nelson is a guy that I think he was voted all Big Ten in the preseason, and he has not played like it at all. And he needs to start making some impact plays. Mathis too, Caleb Tanner, really those three guys. That was kind of the conversation at the start of the year. When those three guys are on the field, we're going to be able to rush the passer and do all these things, and it just hasn't happened yet. Indiana is one of the, they do give up a fair amount of sacks. I mean, not as many as Nebraska has, but they're in the bottom tier in the Big Ten. So this is a big opportunity for that. And for this defense, Indiana doesn't run the ball well. So if Indiana can come in there and kind of ground and pound at Nebraska with because Sean Shivers is averaging 4.6 yards per carry for Indiana. Bazelak he's got sacked, and he's run for negative yards quite a few times, and that's kind of hurt their overall rushing numbers. So I think that's going to be a big test. But it's like Indiana, they do throw the football well, but if this team is able to kind of control the line of scrimmage against Nebraska, I just think that's a really bad sign going forward. But everybody has so far, so we'll see.
Quite honestly, this run defense can make me in my wheelchair look good. So I don't have high hopes, but you never know. You never know. Bye week, no chance to reset things. But boy, has the rush defense left a lot to be desired so far.
Yeah, it really has. And we'll see this. Mickey's got this opportunity over the bye week, and Bill Bush, and magic isn't going to happen in 2 weeks. But at the same time, I mean, this is a very winnable game, and this was a game that Nebraska was always going to have to win to get to a bowl game, and now it's basically a must win. If you don't win this game, I think we can just kiss a bowl game. We just need to stop talking about it at that point, and not that we've talked about it that much, but if you can't beat Indiana, it's going to be impossible to get to 6 wins.
I'm going to say this, and I don't think it will be the defense's fault. I think the offensive line will give Nebraska troubles on Saturday. And, as much as I want the defense to play well, Casey Thompson can't do anything if his line can't protect him.
Yeah, and if that is going to be a huge key. I think KC Thompson, if he does have protection and if he has time, I could see him throwing for 300 some yards against him. I really don't think Indiana, outside of sacks and potentially turnovers, I don't think they're going to be able to stop Nebraska. I think Anthony Grant should be able to be effective against them. But yeah, the offensive line is a big concern. And, there's just not a lot of options really. I mean, Williams is hurt. Corcoran's out there. They've got the transfer from Oklahoma State, who's kind of the backup at tackle. But
Hunter Anthony.
yeah, Hunter Anthony. But man, it's like, people were talking. They saw Piper as the left guard, and it's like, yeah, that offensive line isn't great, but when you really look at it, who else do you go with at this point? There's not really, outside of Latoski, there's not any other options, I don't think.
People were screaming at me like, why aren't we getting offensive line in the offseason? And I said it hinged on guys like Corcoran and Ben Hart and guys like that. And I think by now I can confidently say that they're they're not busts, but they're not what we thought they were. You know, unlike Herm Edwards, they aren't who we thought they were. And it's been really disappointing. I was expecting big leaps from guys like Corcoran and Ben Hart, and it just hasn't been there. So, at this point, you have to, make do with what you have. But what we have on the line right now is very questionable to say the least. And I don't like to bash on players too much, but they really haven't shown me otherwise to make me think otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been, the Oklahoma game was really bad. Indiana's not going to be that talented, but at the same time, some of the play, and it really hurt having Teddy get hurt, Teddy Prajaka. Not that he has played that great at times, but when he's been healthy, he's been pretty solid. But I mean, there's not. If you look at this roster, I don't know that there's a legitimate starting tackle on this team, and that is really troublesome. Not because I mean, this is a major program. Like, you should have like a legit two deep where you're like, like your third string tackle, fourth string tackle should be a player for some, like those guys should be able to like transfer from your team and go to the MAC and play. And right now, I don't know if Nebraska's starting five could transfer to the MAC and get, to like a MAC program and all get starting jobs. I mean, that's how bad they've been.
I totally agree. And, you think about, you know, it's so weird because Nebraska's been able to recruit everywhere else pretty well offensively. It just seems like the offensive line, the biggest need, has kind of been overlooked. And I understand waiting for the development of what you have. And, that's something I preach. Let's wait and see how these guys do. And, I understand, a new coach wanting to try to get the most out of what we have and maybe a new voice would be better. But, you know, it's just not happening. And honestly, I don't know if any coach can fix this or if this is just a lost cause at this point. I don't know. I hate to put that out there, but it's just no improvement whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's been really just, really bad defensively. And, I mean, Casey Thompson and the receivers, I mean, they were getting open last week. I mean, well, 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma. Trey Palmer, has done a nice job. But the thing about it, I mean, you look at Nebraska right now, if you look at the Big Ten rankings for sacks by, Nebraska has 4, which is last in the conference. If you look at sacks against, Nebraska's allowed 11, which is last in the conference. So, I mean, it's like stuff like that right there. That just, if you can't sack the quarterback and if you can't protect your quarterback from getting sacked, then you're probably not going to win very many games. I mean, that's just simple. I mean, as much as people want to complicate football with spread systems and blah, 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 it's really not that complicated. You have to block people, you have to tackle people, and you need guys who can make plays with the football in their hands. Nebraska has that last part. They have guys who can make plays, but they don't have the guys who can block and tackle. So they've really got to improve in the trenches.
And it's so weird because, we got some, acquisitions, I'll call them, out of the transfer portal, and we have some players on the roster, but, you know, looking back on it now, I don't think we did enough in the transfer portal, and we relied too much on, the current players on the roster that were already in the program prior to the season. We put ourselves in a tough spot by not recruiting well enough, but we also put ourselves in a tough spot by not seeing that quicker and addressing our needs in the portal more than what we already did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was there wasn't a great kind of evaluation of the need. And really, I mean, like if you look at offensive line and defensive line, they needed more guys in the transfer portal at both of those positions. I mean, defensive tackle is a huge weakness. And look, I know that they lost a couple people with the suspension on the offensive line. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he was going to be a starter. And then Prajar, I mean, that's two starters that,
Newly, nor did Newly,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I mean, that's basically two starters that you're down. I mean, and that doesn't help, but you've got to have depth though. That's the thing is like there's like Ohio State, if they are losing, a couple tackles, like it's not that big a deal. They've got guys to go, they've got guys raring and ready to go. And so that's what Nebraska needs to get back to. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take, the transfer portal, JUCOs, recruiting out of high school, every avenue. But that's whenever this next coach comes in, like that's, I think one of the biggest things is you have to find somebody who knows how to build a team from the inside out. And Scott Frost didn't try to do that. And yeah, it shows. It really shows. Oh, you're still muted there, Danny.
Hold on a minute. There we go.
There we go.
I was just saying they need to, the next coach needs to figure out how to build a team quickly too, because I do think there's an opportunity to build a team to the transfer portal, JUCOs, whatever, and then be competitive again next season. Heck, it can't get any worse than it is right now. So, I mean, but there needs to be a plan in place and quickly.
Yeah, there does. And I know some people are getting sick of the coaching talk, so we won't talk too much about that right now. We're gonna focus on
I
Indiana.
know
So
I
we got
am.
yeah, I mean, it's like I read everything, I'm always on Twitter and looking around, it's hard not to pay attention to the rumors and think about it, but it's really I just don't it's hard to buy or believe anything right now. Nothing's really going to happen until
November.
November.
I would
So,
honestly wait until November and see,
yeah.
what rumors come out, in November, because by then the season's ending and all the candidates will have a clearer picture of what their future may look like, how they may fit with the program. But it is fun to write about, especially as we dream of greener pastures with the team in the current state.
Yeah, it's like if Nebraska could just win, then maybe that would put some of that on the back burner a little bit. That's why I think this game is so important. I really think this is the state of Nebraska needs a win. Nebraska's lost 9 straight games to FBS teams. We haven't beat an FBS program in 9 straight games. We've lost 7 straight games to Big Ten teams. Like it's time to get a legitimate victory. And on that note, we let's look at what our keys are to victory. So, Danny, we've talked about a few things the Huskers really need to do, but looking at this Indiana matchup, what are your keys for a Nebraska victory?
I want the secondary to play better than what they have, and because they really haven't shown me anything all season, and I feel like I say that every week. But Camper is a dangerous receiver for Indiana, so I really need the secondary to step up and play well. It's clear that the pass rush is inconsistent, and so that falls on the secondary. Can they take on that role? I don't know. Secondly, I want to see some play from Gabe Irvin this week. He was listed as number 2 on the depth chart. AJ Allen did a good job of being Anthony Grant's number 2 back when he was on the field. So I'd love to see Gabe kind of get back on track and pick up the slack. So I guess that would fall under, getting Gabe Irvin going. And, lastly, I want to see a complete slow tempo game from the offense. Oklahoma was a rough game for many, and that included the offense. And this is a good game for the offense to get back on track. And, as long as they play a slow tempo type of game, I think that, this is a very winnable game. I don't really want to see any hurried offense. I want to see slow tempo and, I want to see sustained offense throughout the entirety of it.
Yeah, and I don't I agree with that. I don't mind if you have if you have like an actual tempo when you're getting up there and 15 12 seconds, you feel good and you're snapping the ball, but you don't need to run up there and snap the ball at 28 seconds. Your offensive line sucks. Like just you're wearing those guys out too. So
Give
it's
your
like just
defense a break, offensive line and defense. Give them
yeah.
both a break at the very least. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a game where scoring is going to be at a premium. I think this has the potential to be, I should say, a track meet game. So give your
Yeah.
defense a break whenever possible.
Yeah, right now Nebraska's allowing 33 points a game, Indiana's allowing 29, and that is 13th and 14th in the Big Ten. So second to last and last. So, I think there is going to be a lot of points in this game. So it's terms of, my keys for winning this matchup. One, it's something that Danny talked about. It's winning the time of possession battle. And if you look at it, Indiana has the worst time of possession of any team in the Big Ten. So I think that that's something that Nebraska can do. I would love to see them actually have the football for like 35 minutes in this game. I think that's, the less time that, the defense can be on the field, I think is the better thing for Nebraska. So win the time of possession battle. Now, how are you going to do that? Run the football with Anthony Grant and then also Gabe Urban. This offensive line has not, done well in pass protection. They're giving up, like we said, more sacks than any team in the Big Ten. But at times they have run the foot. They have done well with their run blocking, and part of that is just Anthony Grant, making people miss and making plays. But he's still our best offensive player. I think Anthony Grant's our best overall player. So we need him to touch the football 20 some times, 25 times, maybe 30 times in this game. Grind the hell out of Indiana, and I really think Nebraska has to win the rushing battle, and that's goes along with Anthony Grant. But if Indiana comes into Lincoln and has more rushing yards on Saturday night, I think that's a recipe for disaster. And then lastly, which kind of all goes hand in hand, but I think the key for Nebraska is this pass rush has to step up. They've got to wake up. They've had the ability. O'Shawn Mathis has the ability to play in the NFL. Garrett Nelson, I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but there's a reason why people were talking about him as an all Big Ten type of player. He had almost 5 sacks last season. He just, for whatever reason, has not shown up this year. Caleb Tanner, those 3 guys have got to step up because there really isn't anybody else on this defense that, to me, is like a playmaker in any sense. I think Heinrich and Reimer are just try-hard guys at linebacker. They're not impact players. I don't think there's a single impact player in the secondary. So it really is up to this pass rush to try to force some turnovers. So the pass rush has to get home. You have to win the time of possession battle and the running battle, I think, are the 3 keys for me for Nebraska to beat Indiana.
I'll be honest, I've given up on the pass rush. That's why I just mentioned the secondary because by this point in the season, I think they are what they are. They can, give you plays occasionally and have good games occasionally, but I don't think they can be a consistent force. And to be quite honest with you, I'm not warm and fuzzy about putting this game in the hands of the secondary. But I mean, at this point, I think it's the lesser of 2 evils.
I think, yeah, I think Nebraska needs to go by the strategy of, bend but don't break, and just don't give up 60-yard touchdowns, man. Like they do this every game. I mean, how many did we see it against? I mean, Georgia Southern didn't have maybe that, but they made big plays. North Dakota made big play. They had like a 60-yard run that set up a touchdown, and then so it's like you can't just let Indiana have like 10 explosive plays. If they're gonna beat you down the field, make sure that you're tackling well and that you're actually making the quarterback make good throws, because when you give people a 10-yard cushion and you can give them a 7-yard completion on a first, I mean, that's pretty easy. It's like the Packer, I was watching the Packers and the Bucks. I'm a Packers fan, right? When the Packers defense was dominating the entire game until the 2-minute drill, when they faced Tom Brady, and then they went in the prevent, and guess what? Tom hit a couple of guys wide open, then boom, went right down and scored. So, I mean, if you let a quarterback get confidence like that, I just feel like that was a bad, strategy. I know the cornerbacks aren't great, but, at least have some type of zone coverage or, do something different to at least not just give the offense completions.
Well, we made Ryan Helinski look like Joe Montana again when we played Northwestern. So
And
I
Kyle
don't.
Van Treese.
Oh yeah, that's right. Kyle Van Treese. They're all the games are starting to look the same defensively. Absolutely zero pass rush, zero secondary, and now Shenander's gone. Maybe things will be different. I don't really count Oklahoma because I kind of knew that they were going to get rolled, but we'll see what happens this week.
Yeah, I really don't know what to expect. And I know the pass rush has been disappointing. I just like I to me, Mathis is like he's probably the best player on the defense. And, I know he's played well, but you got to get the quarterback to the ground. Like it doesn't, I mean, tackles, I don't give a shit about tackles. I mean, I just don't care about it. If all those, if you've got a lot of tackles and your defense is giving up like 3 yards per rushing attempt, then sure, that's great. But if you're giving up 5.3 yards per attempt, if you got the worst scoring defense in the Big Ten, I don't care how many tackles you have. You're not tackling people behind the line of scrimmage. So I don't know. I would like to see like Blaine Gunnerson more. He's a guy that they talked about in camp. Jamari Butler. Where are those guys? Because I mean, I'm just not seeing any type of explode. Like Caleb Tanner has hardly done anything all year. I mean, so it's just I don't know if it. I'm not confident in those guys, but if it doesn't come from them, I don't know where like the playmaking on defense is going to come from.
Stephon Wynn, Devin Drew, like those are my guys, like the interior of the defensive line that have really disappointed me. I mean, they're literally like, a turnstile out there, and you can barely tell when they make an impact. And that's concerning because they were kind of your signature transfers in terms of the defensive line. And I'd love to see more from them. You mentioned some guys. Jamiri Butler, I believe, played really well in the spring game, if I recall. That seems so long ago now, but at this point, why not try it? What has been going on right now hasn't been working, so why not try to mix it up? Maybe we will see that. Maybe there's some stuff that the media hasn't gotten to that we don't know about in terms of roster decisions and things like that. But at this point, I'd be willing to try just about anything, throw something at the wall and see if it sticks, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like some of these guys like Raekwon Buckley, a freshman from last year. Some of the fact that like his name I haven't heard his name mentioned once. Like that to me is concerning because he was a pretty highly rated. I believe he was a 3-star, but he was like a top 500 guy. Like he had legitimate offers and came to Nebraska, and that was like a good get for Nebraska. And now it's been, this is his second year. And if the rest of your defensive line really, really, really sucks, you would think that, having a freshman that's pretty talented, you might be ready to step into that role. So I think that there's the fact that we're not, hearing any of those guys just shows that like the defensive line depth chart, especially in the interior, is just a barren wasteland for talent. There's none.
Well, I also think the previous regime was stubborn in terms of trying new personnel. So, I'll wait until the game starts on Saturday to, kind of see what they do. But I think you're right in terms of the depth chart. I mean, even, when you look at the secondary position and the safety position, there is talent there. But once you lose a guy like, Brown or something like that, or not lose him, but in the event of an injury, like who do you have for depth? This team is very top heavy and not a ton of depth, and that all goes back to recruiting, which we could talk about for days. But it's just a reminder of how thin we are at some positions.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's really good that we're seeing, like Gold playing out at safety, and I think it's really promising that we've got Ernest Hausman out there. I want to see him get more snaps. I'm just not. I like Reimer and I like Heinrich. I mean, they make some plays, but they're just not. They're not guys that you can stick out there for. You basically you got to sub them out. I mean, they can't cover. I mean, that's just they're slow as shit. And I'm sorry if that sounds rude. I'm slow as hell too, but they just can't. I can't cover college wide receivers, and neither can they. So please stop trying. But so I love to see some of those guys get more opportunities. Yeah, Ruquan Buckley from last year. I'm just trying to look back at some of our other classes here. Randolph Kapai, he is a 4-star linebacker. Haven't heard his name very much.
Not at all.
So it's like, where are all these guys that have been recruited? And we need people to step up, and they're just not. So there just doesn't seem to be much development. And I think that there's no question that Dawson is not coming back as the D-line coach. He's been terrible. He needs a pink slip like the day the season's over.
I agree, and maybe Tony Tuioti did a better job than we thought he did, but I mean, quite honestly, I wasn't too impressed with him either. So I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Like, because they did, the defensive line played decently last year, but I just wasn't overly impressed with Tuioti. And now he's at Oregon. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. I mean, I think it's been okay. I think it's been an issue ever since, Frost has took over. So, I mean, I don't think he did a great job. I mean, really, the pass rush, there hasn't been a very good pass rusher. There hasn't been, I mean, I'm trying to think back over the last few teams. I mean, there's been a few, solid defensive tackles kind of on the interior. And, they did have some depth like last year and they were solid, but there hasn't been a lot of great recruiting and then developing, like getting guys to the NFL type of, in my opinion. So, and that's you have to have NFL talent, on the offensive and defensive lines. I think if you're gonna, ever really compete in the Big Ten for, division titles and things like that.
I agree, and you have to not only have talent for right now, but you have to continue to stockpile it and build it moving forward so that you don't run into the problems that Nebraska is running into right now. I mean, there has to be a multi-layered, big picture plan, in order to run a successful program. You see the best programs do it. Alabama, Ohio State, they always seem to have a ton of depth at each position, so when the next guy goes, it's next man up and they don't even blink. Up here, if we said next man up, we'd be kind of like freaking out right now. But
Yeah.
but it's just a question of building and developing, and you know, sure, a coach can call good schemes, and I want a coach that can call plays well and do that. But I also want, and I know we're not going to get into a coach talk, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I just want a coach that can develop and really kind of know how to put players in the best position to succeed. Because right now, our development and our pipeline positionally, and also our pipeline in terms of recruiting, is not as strong as it needs to be in order to compete in a very competitive Big Ten.
Yeah, and I was listening to, not to get too much down this rat hole of development and coaching, but I was listening to the latest Bruce Feldman podcast, which was last week, and they were kind of talking about Nebraska and how it got, like how, like the question was how did Scott Frost basically even succeed like at UCF. And one thing that it was an interesting point that Feldman made was that he took over for George O'Leary at Georgia Tech, or I mean, excuse me, at UCF. O'Leary used to coach at Georgia Tech, and his point was that O'Leary was kind of like an authoritarian, and he was super disciplined and like overmanaged the players, and they were all the UCF players were sick of him, and all that type of stuff. And then Frost came in and was like the players' coach kind of thing, and so that infrastructure was kind of already there at the UCF program, and Scott just kind of came in and relaxed things and had the new system and blah blah blah. It worked in that specific scenario, right? But at Nebraska, there was absolutely no infrastructure, and Scott had no ability to build it, was not organized, did not strategize things, like basically didn't seem like he planned or had any clue how to plan anything out at all. So I think that was a very good kind of analogy by Feldman. And I think it shows that Nebraska, whoever they hire, is they need to hire a builder, like somebody who's going to, because this is like a construction project where you're just like, you've got an old shitty house and you need to just bulldoze the entire thing and start from the foundation. So that's what Nebraska needs, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't even care if it's not a sexy name. They just need somebody that can build, because we've gone with the sexy name before and it hasn't worked out. So, not to go, like you said, kind of too far down this rabbit hole, but Nebraska needs somebody that can develop, who's willing to stay here for not a long time, but at least 4 or 5 years, and someone who can kind of maximize what he recruits. Because you just mentioned some names that were highly rated: Kapai, Butler, and we haven't heard them at all. It's just interesting to see how quickly, they've kind of disappeared. And under whatever new coaching staff we have, we need to be able to make less disappearances and more, production out of our recruits.
yeah, because I mean, you look at Wisconsin and like Iowa is a great, Iowa's not like pulling in top 15 classes all the time, but they're always sending, they're sending NFL they're sending offensive linemen to the NFL all the time. Wisconsin, the same thing. Wisconsin's
Tight
always,
ends too for Iowa.
yep, running backs for Wisconsin too, pass rushers. I mean, how many pass rushers has Wisconsin sent? And more than just the Watt brothers. I mean, now some of the other ones haven't had the success, but still, if you're a program and you're taking a 3-star kid and you're getting him drafted in the 5th round, from your perspective as the team, that's a success. Whatever he does at the next level, it's up. But if you're making that development, that's a success. And that's the kind of thing that Wisconsin and Iowa are like really good at, and Nebraska just has been terrible at. So hopefully we can get that fixed. But we'll keep our coaching talk for another day. But looking, I guess, in some way, to kind of flip it back to this current team, if Mickey Joseph wants to get himself into this conversation, I don't know if that's going to be possible. I know there's a lot of Nebraska fans that still support him and that would love to see him be the head coach. I mean, that's something I've heard. I'm sure you've heard that as well, but he's got to win this game if he's going to have any shot at that. I mean, do you agree with that, Danny?
He's got to win this game, but I just want to keep him here, period. Like, I don't care what role. I just want to keep him here. Like, to me, I feel as though, the coaching circle is small. Coaches understand what type of coaches are available, the good ones, the bad ones, the, kind of in the middle ones. And Mickey Joseph is in the upper tier of coaches. Unless you're really, really dumb as a coach, there shouldn't be really any question as to whether or not you want to keep Mickey on staff. So, initially I was for, keeping Mickey Joseph as the head coach, if only to keep him in Lincoln. But the more I think about it, and the more he has a resume that speaks for itself, I wouldn't mind him going back in an assistant capacity, as long as this new coaching staff, if there is one, keeps him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that whoever the new staff is, hopefully, I hope it's Dave Aranda, but if it's Lance Leipold, Bill, I mean, God forbid it's Bill O'Brien, any of these guys, I do think that they would be colossally stupid to not rehire and not do everything to rehire Mickey Joseph. That's like got to be number one on the list, is keep that guy here, take him and the wife out to dinner, whatever you got to do, sweet talk him, make him the associate head coach again, but make sure 100% that guy's on your staff, because you need him. And if you decide not to keep him, then that's not a good start, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens there. But it seems like a good time to move into our predictions. I know for a fact we have not been accurate on our predictions this season, especially me. I'm 0-4 against the spread this year, picking Nebraska. I did pick them to beat North Dakota, so I mean, against the spread, I've got one win. Or I mean, not including the spread, I've got one win. So even though our predictions haven't been great, we'll still try to throw them out there, because that's what we do. So Danny, I know you haven't been super thrilled about these predictions, but we've got the point spread, and things could change obviously between now and Friday. But Nebraska's sitting at 6.5 points. What's your prediction for this week? How you feeling?
Ooh. Honestly, 31-27 Indiana.
31-27 Indiana. So do you think that, what's your reasoning?
They're supposed to win this game. They're favored to win this game, which means that they'll get our hopes up and then they'll let us down once again. I mean, it all depends on how the defense plays, and even with a new defensive coordinator, I'm not confident that that defense will be able to keep up in a track meet, and I'm not confident that the offensive line will hold up for Casey Thompson and the rest of the unit, running backs included, because, not to go off on a tangent here, but we've seen Anthony Grant and the running backs make good plays off of busted line play. So they can only do that so many times before they get shut down. So I just see the offensive line and the secondary in particular failing Nebraska.
Yeah, it's definitely, those are, the big concerns, covering camper. DJ Matthews is another name you need to know from Indiana, was a former, I think he was a 5-star recruit, but really ranked really high, has kind of had some injuries, but he's a guy that's very capable of having a big game. But, I'm always one, I'm drinking the red Kool-Aid, as always, that. I love it. I get drunk on it. I don't care. So I feel like this is this game sets up, I feel like, well, for Nebraska to win. But along maybe I should have included this in my keys. I think Nebraska has to get off to a fast start, win the toss, get the ball, get a touchdown, get a stop, try to get like a double-digit lead. I feel like that is possible. I feel like this team's going to be really fired up and start kind of similar to Oklahoma. The difference is that Indiana is not Oklahoma talent-wise. So my prediction is that Nebraska is going to get the lead. Casey Thompson's going to throw for over 300 yards. Anthony Grant's going to have a good day. The defense is going to scare the shit out of us, and Indiana's going to come back, and it's going to be kind of a track meet. But I think Nebraska holds on 38-31. The defense finds a way to make a play or come up with a stop, get a lucky interception or something. But I'm going to go Nebraska 38-31. I'm going to say that they covered the spread, and I'm probably going to look like a moron next week. So,
and a tempoed fast start at that. A slower fast start, so to speak. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't want to say this is do or die, but this is an important game for the program. And, now we're kind of getting into the meat of the schedule, so to speak. And I didn't really want to be here at this point in the season, but, now you just got to make the most of it, especially if we want to at least have a chance for the November slate.
Yeah, for sure. And this game is, just you need some momentum, and it's just like Indiana is just not. I mean, they're a solid team. Tom Allen's a solid coach. It's not going to be an easy win by any stretch of the imagination. But if you can't win this game, I just don't know if you're going to win. I just feel like you've got to get some confidence back. And that's I just don't know how you do that without winning. And it's like putting the cart before the horse. But you've just got to go out and have like one good performance. And I feel like if you do that, it's going to make things a lot easier, like next week going into Rutgers in a really important game, because these next 4 games, I mean, really, Nebraska has to win at least 3 of them. They've got to win 3 out of the next 4 to even have a prayer of a bowl game. And frankly, if Nebraska wants to get to a bowl game, they're probably going to have to win all 4. I mean, honestly,
yeah,
which is going to be really hard. I don't know if they can win at Purdue, but but at any rate, if you win 3 out of the next 4, I mean, you're sitting there 4-4 going into the last month, and that's, I know, 2-2 against that slate's asking a lot, but at least you have a punching chance. Yeah, it's doable. Yeah, and you play Wisconsin and Minnesota at home. Although Minnesota's probably going to run for like 500 yards against us. So
they always do. They always do.
And that's that's what just bothers me so much is that like Wisconsin and Iowa and Minnesota, they do run the damn ball. They play physical football, and Nebraska's like trying to be UCF North, and that didn't work. So just
hopefully
please
not anymore.
Please don't hire another coach like that. Please, whoever you just get somebody that freaking understands that you actually need like linemen to win.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Which I don't understand. I mean, Scott knows that. I mean, shit. He played on 2 of the teams that had some of the best offensive lines in college football. I don't know, whatever. He tried his best, but he just wasn't up to snuff.
He wasn't up to snuff, but he got a nice payday out of it, so I'm sure that makes things a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't think I keep waiting for his name to pop up. Like with one of these other jobs. Like I don't know if I just don't know what's going to happen next for him. I bet somebody maybe will take a shot at him as offensive coordinator or something.
Yeah.
I don't.
Because I think he's a good offensive play caller. I really do think that, but I just think the complete head coaching the complete package as a head coach just wasn't there.
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's like he was basically, he ran a really great offense at UCF, and I mean, hell, he did a good job at Oregon, but at calling the plays. But it's a lot easier when you got all that talent than than when you don't. So
I agree.
But anyways, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up this keys and predictions edition of this for the Husker Big Red YouTube channel here. So we'll have some more content, coming up this week, and we're possibly going to have a stream for Saturday. So we'll let you guys know about that. But we'll have some more pregame coverage, post-game coverage of Nebraska and Indiana. You can check out everything here at the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. Everything we put here is also on the Husker Big Red podcast. We turn them into the podcast episodes as well. So check that out on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else that you get your podcasts. You can find all my written content at huskerbigred.com. And Danny's is at thegreatcornholio.org. You can also follow us on Twitter. Check out our Facebooks. We'll have some of those links in the description here in the comment section. So as always, folks, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.